My 7-year-old looked at the family tree in my parents' hallway and asked, "Where are we?" My mom said, "Let's not ruin this moment." There were 38 names on it, every single one except me and my son. I took a deep breath and replied, "Then your name won't be on the family vacation list." And panic immediately set in. My 7-year-old kid noticed the family tree hanging in my parents' hallway and asked, plain as day, "Where are we on it?" And my mom brushed it off by saying, "Let's not ruin the moment," which was wild considering there were 38 names on that thing and every single one of them was there except mine and my son's. So I took a slow breath and said back that in that case her name wouldn't be on the list for the family vacation. And that's when everything went sideways fast. I'm Evan, I'm 35, and I'm a single mom raising my 7-year-old boy, Noah. And it's always just been the two of us living in Asheville, where I work as a financial analyst and do my best to keep things steady. My parents live about 20 minutes away, and they're the kind of Southern folks who live for tradition, Sunday dinners, and keeping up appearances. My older sister Megan lives 5 minutes from them with her husband and their 3 kids, and my younger brother Ryan is married too but has been struggling financially ever since their second baby came along. So I've helped out more than once, covering rent one time, buying groceries plenty of times, never keeping score because that's what family does, or at least what I thought family did. I never believed we were perfect, but I always assumed we were still a unit, right up until last Sunday. We were all gathered at my parents' place for a laid-back afternoon with burgers on the grill and iced tea on the patio, and while everyone was catching up, Noah wandered down the hallway. Then a few minutes later he called out asking me where we were. And when I went to see what he meant, I found him standing in front of that big wooden family tree that's been on the wall forever, custom made years ago with painted branches and little gold nameplates organized by generation, something everyone always talked about like it was a work of art. I followed his finger to where he was pointing and my stomach dropped because we weren't there, not anywhere, not tucked into a corner or hidden under a branch, just gone, even though I counted 38 names across 5 generations including my parents, Megan and her husband, all 3 of their kids, Ryan, his wife, their new baby, and even my dad's cousin who moved to Florida back in 1994. I searched that thing inch by inch hoping I'd missed something, but there was nothing, and that's when my mom came around the corner, glanced at the tree, then at me and Noah, and said, "Let's not ruin the moment like it hadn't already been crushed." I didn't argue, I just said the first thing that hit my mouth, which was that her name wouldn't be on the family vacation list, and even though her expression barely shifted, I felt the room go quiet in that heavy way where everyone suddenly understands exactly what's at stake. That trip was my idea, paid for with my end-of-year bonus, a 7-bedroom beach house in Charleston that I booked so no one else would have to spend a dime. Because I wanted Noah to have cousins around him and all of us to have a week that felt like what family is supposed to feel like. Megan was already planning themed dinners, Ryan told me the trip felt like a blessing, and everyone was counting on me because I was the one making it happen, except somehow I wasn't even important enough to make it onto a painted tree. Megan tried to smooth things over, telling me to breathe and saying it had to be a mistake, and my mom jumped in with excuses about the artist not being finished yet and how it was all temporary, insisting of course we were family, but the truth was that tree had been updated months ago, rehung, polished, and admired like a prized painting, with plenty of time to add everyone else except me and my son. I told them I'd be canceling the vacation or maybe just taking Noah and a few close friends instead, because I wasn't about to bankroll a family event where we clearly didn't count, and that's when the real panic hit. Ryan went pale, his wife looked like she might cry, Megan started pleading with me not to make a rash choice, and my dad finally came in from the patio asking what the hell was happening while I stood there listening to them defend something that no longer felt like family at all. Deep down I knew this wasn't really about a missing name. It was about a decision they'd all made long before that moment. I didn't wait around, I walked straight into the kitchen and pulled out the folder with every vacation detail, every rental agreement and confirmation email I'd been organizing for months, and Megan followed me asking in that overly careful voice if I was serious. And I told her I wasn't interested in passive-aggressive cleanup, that either Noah and I were family or we weren't, and there was no middle space where I paid for everything and smiled from the sidelines. She tried to spin it as a mix-up, saying maybe Mom forgot to include me when she sent the names to the artist, calling it a technical error, but funny enough that error just happened to leave out the only single mother, the only grandchild without someone else's last name, and the one person who never asked for help but always showed up when others needed it. I reminded her we'd talked about that tree over coffee a month earlier, when she told me how beautiful it was turning out and how perfect it was going to be for the kids, so no, it wasn't a mistake, it was a message I should have caught sooner. Then Ryan walked in holding his phone like he was about to read from a script and said we should all calm down and think about how this would affect the kids, how his daughter was excited and canceling would crush her. And I finally said what I should have said years ago, that maybe he should have thought about his kids before letting our family erase mine. He froze like I'd slapped him, his wife wouldn't even meet my eyes, and I asked if he remembered April when he couldn't pay rent and I wired $1,200 without a second thought, or the time I bought his toddler a car seat because money was tight, or when they got sick last year and I drove an hour to drop groceries and diapers on their porch, and apparently none of that was worth earning a small gold nameplate on a painted family tree. And then he said something that made my jaw lock up instantly. He said Noah probably wouldn't even remember something like this, that I was projecting my own feelings onto him, that maybe this whole thing was more about me than it was about my kid, and I didn't even stop to respond because I walked straight past him and over to my mom, who was sitting on the couch pretending to scroll her phone like we weren't actively blowing the family apart 3 feet away, and I asked her one simple question: why? She didn't really answer, just said I was being dramatic, that the artist didn't have room for everyone on the tree, that choices had to be made about who belonged on it, and that they'd made theirs. So I told them calmly that I'd be canceling the family vacation effective immediately and that Noah and I would go somewhere else, maybe with friends, maybe just the two of us, but no one else would be invited. That's when Ryan really started to panic, asking if I was serious, reminding me they'd already requested time off and that they couldn't afford to throw together another trip this late. And I told him flat out that wasn't my problem anymore. Then he asked the question he clearly didn't want the answer to, asking if this meant I was cutting them off, and I said yes, even with the baby, yes, even though they were struggling, yes, because I had a child too, one they'd all apparently forgotten existed. And I'd rather put my time and money into building a life where Noah is wanted than keep patching holes for people who wouldn't even give him a single branch on a damn family tree. After that, no one argued. Megan looked like she was on the verge of tears but held it in. My mom muttered that she never thought things would go this far. My dad still said nothing, and I didn't yell or demand apologies. I just packed up our things, took Noah's hand and left. On the drive home I kept thinking about how many years I'd spent trying to stay connected to people who clearly had a very different definition of family than I did, because to them I was the backup plan, the emergency fund, the reliable helper who made life easier but never quite belonged, and I decided that was over. Monday morning I woke up early, sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and my laptop while Noah slept curled up in his dinosaur blanket the way he always does after a weekend at my parents' place. Except this time there was no goodbye hug from Grandma, no wave from the porch, no text asking if we got home safe, and I logged into my booking account and canceled the beach house. 7 bedrooms right on Folly Beach with a private pool and a grill on the deck. Gone in about 10 seconds. I lost the deposit, about $900, and yeah, it stung, but not nearly as much as watching my son stare at that tree like he didn't exist, or realizing my generosity had always been accepted but never respected. By lunchtime the family group text was blowing up. Megan starting things off with a long message about how everything had escalated too fast, how she was sure it was an oversight, how Mom just wanted the tree to look balanced, and I didn't reply. She sent another message saying the kids were crushed and had already bought beach gear. Then Ryan texted me privately asking if I was really canceling everything, and when I said yes he asked what they were supposed to do now, and I told him that wasn't my responsibility. He sent a thumbs up emoji, then 5 minutes later followed it with a wall of text about rough patches and how family is supposed to step up, especially when kids are involved, which was almost funny considering that's exactly what I'd been doing quietly for the past 3 years. I took a screenshot of the vacation cancellation, added a short message, and sent it to the group thread saying the vacation was canceled, Noah and I were making other plans, I would no longer be providing financial help to anyone in the family, and that we wouldn't attend family events unless we were clearly included from the beginning. Then I muted the chat and closed my laptop. I expected silence, but what I got instead was anger, with 6 missed calls from Ryan and 2 from my mom that night, and a voicemail from Ryan where he sounded half panicked and half furious, saying they were counting on the trip, that it was cruel to pull out when they had no time to plan anything else, bringing up the baby, saying they needed formula and were behind on bills, accusing me of humiliating them and punishing his family over something that supposedly had nothing to do with them, even though it had everything to do with all of them, every single person who saw that tree, and stayed quiet. I didn't respond, and the next day my dad called, which shocked me because he never calls unless someone's in the hospital, and he asked if we could talk, just the two of us, and I said no, then asked if we could have dinner, just him, me and Noah, and when I asked why he said he wanted to make things right, so I asked him if we were on the family tree now, and when he said that wasn't really the point, I hung up. That evening Megan posted a group photo from last Christmas, everyone smiling by the fire holding mugs, with a caption that said family is everything, you fight, you forgive, you move forward, subtle enough if you didn't know the story, and I didn't react, but I saved the photo and zoomed in, and there I was shoved into the corner half cropped out, holding Noah on my lap, and I wondered how long I'd been invisible. That Thursday night Noah and I were eating frozen pizza on the couch when he asked if we were still going to the beach, and I told him not with everyone else but yes we were still going, just us, maybe with friends, and after thinking about it for a minute he asked if we could bring the metal detector from last summer, and I told him absolutely. Later that night I booked a small 2-bedroom cottage near Tybee Island, right on the sand, with a porch swing and a kitchen and no one else's name on the lease, no group itinerary, no planning committees, no guilt-filled messages, just me and my kid, because I've bent enough trying to stay connected to people who never once reached back. I'm done bending now, and instead I'm focused on building something new, something solid and safe for Noah. A life where he never has to look around and ask where we fit, because wherever we are, that's where we belong. The morning we headed out for Tybee Island I felt this strange lightness in my chest, like I'd finally dropped a weight I didn't even realize I'd been hauling around for years. And it wasn't just about the trip, it was about knowing we were going somewhere that didn't require pretending or shrinking or smoothing things over. It was just me and Noah, no group dynamics to manage, no side glances, no family guilt hanging in the air, and he picked the music for the drive, mostly movie soundtracks mixed with whatever odd mashup he's currently obsessed with, and we stopped for breakfast at a little spot off the highway that served pancakes as big as my face, where he spilled syrup everywhere, and for once I truly didn't care. We pulled up to the cottage around 2 in the afternoon, and it wasn't fancy or Instagram-worthy, but it was ours, 2 bedrooms, a porch swing, and the sound of the ocean rolling in less than 200 feet away, and that night we fell asleep on the couch watching a nature documentary, and for the first time in a long while I didn't feel like I was constantly on edge waiting for something to go wrong. By the second day I finally caved and checked my phone, not because I planned to, but because curiosity got the better of me, and it was absolute chaos, more than a dozen missed calls, a string of messages from Megan trying to play peacemaker, a couple of vague jabs from Ryan, and one short text from my mom that just said we need to talk, all of which I ignored without hesitation. What I didn't ignore was the email that came through from someone I barely knew, Rachel, the wife of Ryan's best friend, and I almost deleted it thinking it was spam until the subject line stopped me cold. You deserve to know what's being said. The email wasn't long, but it landed like a punch to the gut because she explained she wasn't trying to stir things up, but Ryan had been talking about me nonstop since the trip was canceled, telling people I'd had a meltdown, that I was unstable, controlling, bitter, and then I read the line that made me stop breathing for a full minute, where he told them the reason my name wasn't on the family tree was because no one ever really knew who Noah's father was anyway. I just stared at the screen, completely frozen, not even angry at first, just hollow in a way I can't fully describe. Because he hadn't just taken a shot at me, he'd gone after my child, a 7-year-old who had done nothing except try to belong, the same kid who still makes birthday cards for people who forget his. In that moment I thought about every time I'd covered for Ryan, every excuse I'd made for him, every bill I'd paid, every secret I'd protected, and I knew that chapter was done. I closed the laptop, stepped out onto the porch and watched Noah play in the sand, completely unaware that someone who called him buddy at Thanksgiving had dragged his name through the dirt behind his back. And there he was digging a hole for his plastic shark, humming to himself, and I made myself a promise right then, never again. For the rest of the trip I didn't check my phone once, not even a glance, and instead we built sandcastles, roasted marshmallows on the stove, and sat watching the waves roll in. And on our last night I asked Noah what he wanted our next adventure to be, and after thinking for a second he said somewhere cold, maybe with snow, so snow it would be. When we got home I got organized in a way I hadn't before, printing out the email, pulling bank statements, and laying out every transaction I'd made to help Ryan over the last 3 years, rent checks, grocery money, the time I covered their car insurance so they wouldn't lose the car, and when I added it all up it came to over $14,000. Then I did something I should have done a long time ago and called my Uncle David, my mom's brother, the quiet one in the family who avoids drama but notices everything, and who also happens to sit on the board of a private elementary school here in Asheville that I'd had my eye on for Noah for over a year but never thought I could ask about. I told him everything, not just the tree or the vacation, but the years of being sidelined, the financial help no one acknowledged, and finally what Ryan had said, and he didn't interrupt or try to balance sides, he just said one thing: you've been carrying them longer than they ever carried you, and then told me to expect a call from the school's director. When I hung up I didn't feel triumphant or angry, just steady, like the dust had finally settled and I could see the whole picture clearly, because for years I thought doing the right thing meant keeping the peace, staying quiet, being the helper in the bridge, But now I understand what happens when you stay silent too long. People start writing your story for you, and I'm not letting that happen anymore. 2 days after that conversation, the school called, a woman named Karen from admissions who said she'd love to schedule a tour for Noah. No waiting list, no hoops to jump through, just a simple sentence that hit me harder than she could know. Uncle David speaks very highly of you and we'd love to meet your son. And it wasn't even about the school at that point. It was about hearing that someone wanted him without hesitation or awkward pauses or pretending we didn't exist. I hung up, leaned back and took a long breath, and then there was a knock at the door. It was my mom. No warning, no text, just standing on my porch with a Tupperware container, and that familiar practice smile she uses when something uncomfortable is about to be smoothed over. And I didn't invite her in. She said she brought leftovers. I told her we didn't need them, and after a pause she asked if we could talk for a minute. So I stood in the doorway with Noah in the back room playing video games, and when she tried to look past me to catch a glimpse of him, I didn't move. She told me they were going to add my name and Noah's to the family tree, said it softly like it was some kind of gift or peace offering, and I just stared at her without saying thank you or anything at all, because all I could think about were the Christmases where Noah and I sat on the edges, the birthdays where his name felt like an afterthought, and all the times I was asked to understand why there just wasn't room for more. She kept talking, explaining how they'd discussed it, how no one meant for it to hurt, how the tree was supposed to be a simple little project, and I remember repeating the word simple out loud before telling her that somehow they'd managed to turn something simple into something incredibly complicated, and when she tried to hand me the food again I didn't take it. Then she asked a question that caught me off guard, asking what I wanted from them, and for the first time I answered with exactly what I should have said years ago, which was nothing, because it was never about wanting more, it was about wanting basic respect, inclusion and acknowledgement, and once those things have to be asked for or begged for they stop meaning anything. She stood there another moment holding the container, then turned and left without another word. The very next day something else happened that I didn't expect at all. A handwritten letter showed up in my mailbox with no return address, but I knew the handwriting immediately. It was from Ryan, and since the blow-up I'd assumed he was still out there spinning his version of the story, but this letter wasn't what I thought it would be. It wasn't long or polished, there was no defending himself and no begging, just an apology, where he admitted he crossed a line when he talked about Noah, that it was cruel and said purely out of spite, and that even though he hated himself for it he wouldn't blame me if I never spoke to him again. He owned up to telling people I'd lost it and that I was trying to control everyone, and then admitted the truth was I had every reason to walk away, and that he knew I'd helped him more times than he deserved. Then he wrote something I wasn't ready for, saying he'd gotten used to me always showing up, that he never stopped to ask why, he just assumed I always would, and that at some point expectation replaced gratitude, and that's what broke everything. He said he missed Noah, that his daughter kept asking where her cousin was and didn't understand why we weren't around anymore, and he ended the letter by saying he wanted to start over if I'd ever allow it, that he knew he didn't deserve it but still wanted to try. I read the letter twice right away and then again later that night after Noah fell asleep, and I didn't know what to do with it, because I wasn't ready to forgive him and I wasn't sure I trusted him, but I believed one thing for sure, that letter wasn't performative. It wasn't like my mom's fix-it speech or Megan's carefully neutral texts. It felt raw and awkward and human in a way Ryan had never been with me before. I didn't call him and I didn't write back, but I didn't throw it away either. Instead I slipped it into the same folder where I'd kept the screenshots, the receipts and Rachel's printed email, only this time it didn't feel like evidence, it felt like the start of something different. Not reconciliation yet, but something beyond silence. I wasn't holding my breath or waiting on anyone to change, but for the first time in weeks the anger inside me wasn't burning through my skin. I just sat quietly and waited, and maybe that was the beginning of something new. I'd already made peace with the idea that I might never see any of them again. That was my quiet decision, no dramatic speeches or final confrontations, just a slow fade while I built a new life that was more intentional, more honest, smaller but real, and I liked it that way. So when Noah came home from school holding a construction paper birthday invitation I didn't think twice, assuming it was from a classmate, until I realized it was from my niece, Ryan's daughter, with crooked handwriting and purple marker and glitter smeared around her name. Inside was an invitation to her 8th birthday party at the community park near the old elementary school, the one we used to walk to after church back when we were still pretending everything was fine, and Noah lit up in a way I hadn't seen in weeks, asking if we could go because he missed her and said they used to be cousin best friends who needed to catch up. Every instinct in me wanted to say no, but when I looked at him I realized I'd already protected him from enough, and maybe this time it should be his choice, so I told him we'd go, just for an hour. The park was already buzzing when we arrived, with streamers, balloons, folding tables, and a unicorn piñata, and Ryan and his wife had clearly gone all out. And even though I parked across the lot, I could feel the tension sitting heavy in my stomach as Noah ran off laughing with the other kids like nothing had ever happened. I stayed on the edges with my arms crossed and phone in hand until Ryan spotted me about 15 minutes later, froze, and then walked over slowly without making a scene, thanked me for coming, and when I said we were there for Noah, he nodded and handed me a folded piece of paper from his back pocket. It was a fresh printout of the family tree, same design and border, but this time Noah's name and mine were right there, not squeezed in or added as an afterthought, but placed exactly where we belonged with equal branches, and I couldn't speak. I just stared at it while Ryan told me he knew it didn't fix everything but that it was a start and that he was sorry for all of it before walking away. I stood there holding the paper like it might fall apart, watching Noah run across the grass with cake in his hand, laughing like he hadn't been carrying any of the weight I had. And when the party wrapped up, Ryan came back with his daughter, who handed me a cupcake for Noah with the same bright kindness in her eyes that Ryan used to have years ago. Before we left, he told me they'd love to see us again sometime, no pressure. And that night Noah fell asleep early with frosting still on his chin and the cupcake box on the nightstand while I sat at the table under the lamp looking at the tree again, knowing it didn't erase the past but realizing this time it was a choice, mine, not theirs. The next morning a text came in from Megan with no words, just a photo of the family tree framed and hanging back in my parents' hallway with our names finally there. And instead of feeling like an outsider, I felt something different, because I wasn't chasing acceptance anymore or trying to earn space that should have always been ours. I didn't respond right away. I just closed the message, watched Noah running in the yard, and let myself feel something I hadn't felt in years: closure, knowing they hadn't fixed everything and probably never would, but Ryan's letter, the invitation, and the tree weren't empty gestures. They were real shifts, small but honest, little cracks of light in a long dark tunnel, and maybe that's how healing actually starts, not with a grand apology, but with showing up again and again, and this time, finally I was willing to let them try.